Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. Thank you for joining us for another FlyCast Partners webinar. Today's webinar presentation is Who is Ivanti and what is Heat ITSM? And even since we put this webinar title out there, things have changed a little bit more than Heat ITSM, and I'm sure Kyle's going to get into that a little later, but Kyle Hamilton. He is a software engineer for FlyCast Partners with over 25 years experience in the IT service management space, and he's going to be presenting today's webinar. His career started as a network engineer for Perot Systems and was quickly hired by Network Associates as a professional services consultant, where he developed ITSM solutions around the world for thousands of customers. Kyle's primary focus is on ITIL processes and architecture. His extensive knowledge of CMDB and asset management projects and dealings with automation and management solutions such as BMC Client Manager and BMC Discovery. Kyle has been certified consultant for Front Range, Peregrine Software, BMC Remedy Force, Service Desk Express, BMC Discovery, BMC Client Manager, as well as ITIL certified in Microsoft MCSE and many, many others. Before we get started with today's presentation, Kyle, let me introduce our organization. FlyCast Partners is here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience. Founded and staffed by personnel that have many years of experience in the IT space, we took the best ideas from these collective experiences and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practice. Our professional services can easily scale up or down in order to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on your normal day-to-day operations, saving you both precious time and money. Please take a few moments and visit our website at www.flycastpartners.com. or feel free to reach out to us direct at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. I encourage you to go to our website and check out some of the training that we have coming up and some of the webinars that we're offering over the next couple of months. Share this information with a friend or with a coworker. The more the merrier, right? And take advantage of these educational opportunities on various topics. We invite you to take a look at our resource page and check out some white papers and check out further information about ITSM tools, ITM tools, workload automation, capacity optimization, and especially enterprise service management and business operations. Today's presentation, as I stated, will be conducted by none other than Kyle Hamilton, and he will be taking questions at the end of today's presentation. So I encourage you to please type your questions in the Q&A section of this WebEx, and I will read them off to Kyle towards the end of the presentation, and he'll answer as many as he can with the time allocated for today's webinar. Without further delay, I'm going to turn this over to you, Kyle.
All right, thank you very much, Rich, and welcome everybody. I appreciate you carving out time out of your day to take a look at Heat and Ivanti. To that point, before I get started, let me just mention that for those of you that may be wondering the difference between Heat and Ivanti, back around the first of the year, I think it was January 3rd, Heat Software and Landesk merged to create Ivanti as a company. So you're going to see, throughout this interface and throughout the demonstration, you're going to see Heat mentioned. Know that over, because it's so recent and such a new acquisition, a new company, that over the near term, you're going to see the Ivanti brand probably move into the interface and move into the software, whereas you see Heat today. So just understand that, Heat and Ivanti in terms of brand is going to eventually merge and become one as soon as they have an opportunity from, a software perspective to make those, updates in the near term. In terms
one thing I want to add is,
one
thing I wanted to add to that is it's through some interaction we had this week, we learned that now the Heat ITSM software is now what they're referring to as Ivanti ITSM software. That is something that that's a recent change.
That's correct. So, you'll see in the, as Ivanti, merges their brand into the application, you're going to see that take place, in the interface. And where we see Heat today, you will eventually, more than likely, see Ivanti. I don't know how widespread that's going to be or where exactly you'll see that, but just know that, Heat and Ivanti are one and the same at this point if you hear those terms used interchangeably. So with that, we're going to take a look at the application and talk a little bit about functionality. I'm going to talk, walk you through some of the interfaces that are available within the Heat or Ivanti service management tool. And we're going to then discuss a little bit about some of the differentiators between, Ivanti, Heat. Again, you're going to kind of hear me say both, from the competition, from the rest of the marketplace, so that you get a good understanding of not only the basic capabilities, but what differentiates it from everything else you might be evaluating or looking at. So we're going to do that from the perspective of 3 different users. First one we're going to look at is we're going to be dealing with Angela, we're going to be dealing with Alan, and we're going to be dealing with the admin. So we're going to take a look first at Angela, who is a self-service user. So a customer that would be logged in, needing to submit an incident, make a request within Heat, and we'll log in as Angela so you can see exactly what your end user would be able to have access to and what capabilities they have through the self-service portal. Now, if you notice up in the upper right-hand corner, it identifies Angela as being a self-service user, and you notice that when I log in as Angela, it immediately drops me into the self-service portal. That's going to become relevant as we look at a couple of the other roles that may be slightly different, so that you can see the difference between what an end user has access to and how they interact with the system versus somebody who's a service desk analyst or service desk manager or even an administrator of the tool. Now, Angela logged in to the self-service portal, you see, has a basic home page layout that provides, all of the key modules, dropped onto the home page in terms of being able to see open items or currently submitted, incidents, requests, templates that may be available to her to, make quick submissions of, things like password reset requests and the typical issues you see all the time. Knowledge articles, so FAQs and problem how-to solutions, things like that, so that, right here from the home page, they have easy access to all of those key areas of the self-service portal. There's also a set of tabs that enable that same kind of access up at the top, so they can move from their home page to the service catalog, to the My Items page, depending upon what their needs are, or they can access that directly from that home page layout as you built it. And it's important to note with Heat, you can easily drag and drop and configure this portal according to your needs without having to do any kind of scripting or coding or have some kind of development background. So it does not require development level skills to be able to administer the tool. Anybody that has a basic understanding of the operations and the workflow of the service desk can easily be tasked with administrative duties without having to worry that they have to be a Java developer or some kind of scripting pro to be able to administer the tool. Now, of course, one of the core features of the self-service portal is being able to self-help. So, in addition to having, the top 5 issues and questions on the home page, they can also access the Knowledge Center via the tabs at the top or via a button that's provided here on the home page. So if they want to, perform a search, for example, related to email issues, they can browse that library or search through that knowledge base to find potential solutions to allow them to self-help. And one thing that's nice is that, immediately not only presents them with, high-level information related to that article, but also user ratings so that you can, they can immediately get access to see which documents or articles are highly rated, which ones maybe need some updating or need some massaging, so that they can use that information to determine which knowledge article they want to browse and actually follow through to solution. So you can provide everything a user would need to be able to self-help, whether it be just a strict Q&A, hyperlinks to download files, things of that nature, so that you can make these articles not only attractive but functional, so that they're not simply providing a user with descriptions on what to do. You can provide everything from graphics to links to download files, etc., so that they can actually use these articles to correct or resolve their own issues in a vast majority of cases, hopefully. Now, if they're unable to resolve anything through the knowledge base, then of course they have access to be able to submit incidents or submit requests through this portal. And you'll see they could do so via a template. So if I have a particular problem like accessing a shared drive, then I can access that via a template that's available to me on that home page and immediately just verify that that's my particular issue, or that's the request I need to make, and be able to save that without having to go in and fill out one field or 20 fields of information. You'll notice down in the bottom right-hand corner, of course, you can also generate all of the outbound email notifications to users and staff and the like, so that everybody can be made aware of a new incident coming in. The users made aware that you've actually captured their request or captured their incident, and those notifications are under the complete control of the administrator, so you can control how much or how little information is sent out via email and notified to that user, whether it be emails to the customer, whether it be emails notifying staff that they've got a new request that's been assigned to them, or whether it be email notifications to the administrator letting them know that something's been escalated or there's an issue that's breaching a service level agreement. You're able to control and manage all of those outbound notifications that HEAT generates. Now, if the user needs to make a request, maybe it's not something that's part of a standard template. Maybe it's not your typical break fix issue. I can't get to the internet, or my password's not working. Then you can also expose through the self-service portal a service catalog. One of the nice things that I like about HEAT is the fact that the service catalog comes pre-populated with approximately 80 different service requests out of the box. So customers, they're looking to implement service requests, have a pre-built library, as you can see, all different types of requests, from employee onboarding to application access requests to mobile requests, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time when you're looking at implementing the service desk simply building up your service catalog from scratch. You've got a large library of requests that are available to you from day one, even if they're say 50, 75% of what you're needing. You can easily take these and modify these according to your needs in terms of fulfillment tasks, approval processes, and forms, so that you can use these out-of-the-box requests to quickly spin up a service catalog, even if you don't already have something in the works today. Now, taking a look at specific types of requests, of course, you can see over on the left-hand side, I can browse different categories, so you can use this portal for a lot more than just typical IT. It could be HR requests, facilities requests, security, lost my security badge and need to have a security badge replaced, or I need my parking space reassigned, and start to use something like a self-service portal for a lot more than your typical IT request that you would typically see. Now, if I look at something specific like a new hire request, then you'll see it allows the user to complete a specifics form. So in the case of a new hire, for example, I have unique requirements in terms of what kind of information I need, who's being hired, In this case, let's say Adams being hired. In which department, what title do they are they being hired under? Are they full-time, part-time, contract employees? So you can have things like different workflow associated with your contractors, for example, versus a full-time or a part-time employee. So all of the prompts and the fields that these users are completing as they go through this form could then dictate exactly what's going to be required in terms of fulfillment steps. Another nice feature is, if you've got some kind of minimum lead time, which you'll notice it indicates that here on my form, then as I go to actually select, when I need this new hire created, it actually blanks out the calendar for all of those dates that fall within that minimum time. So I'm unable to request this user for the next week or the next couple of days based on that lead time. Now, you can certainly even make things a little more complex where if they needed somebody set up within that 2-week time frame, then you could have an additional field that they could, or checkbox that they could select, say, emergency hire or override, new hire process, and then maybe, prompt them for some business justification to say why do they need this done in such a quick fashion, so that you could potentially have users that could, override that process, but by default, you're able to kind of define those time frames that it's going to take you to onboard somebody or terminate somebody or provide some access, so that it restricts them from being able to select anything inside of that time frame, so that and the user knows when they make the request that the time frame that's going to be required in order to set up that user. And you'll see it walks them through a series of tabs, from front to back. And here we'll say new HR manager. And as you can see, as I go through and complete those forms, it'll give me a check. If I'm missing fields of information, as in that last case, then it'll show me via a little warning message that I'm missing some information that's needed for this particular type of request. And it'll actually walk me through, a series of prompts and pages that you can build to indicate exactly who we're hiring and what's necessary. Now, another nice thing with HEAT is it also allows you to include the idea of costing. So you can see on the right-hand side, you have a cost related to this new hire. And as I go through and make selections, if they need anything more than a cubicle, for example, they need a full, an office space, there may be cost associated with that request. And as I make those selections, it's summing up or totaling that cost for me over here on the right-hand side. So I'll say this is a corporate office. And then as I continue through, do they require a computer, where you can start doing things like conditional prompting. So if they need a computer, then we can start asking them additional questions related to what kind. They need a desktop, do they need a laptop? And again, based on my responses, it may ask additional questions, and it's also adding that additional cost based on the selections that the user makes. So as I go through and indicate what kind of computer and do they require an external monitor for that laptop, for example, we're getting a sum total of the cost over on the right-hand side, and users can walk through here step by step. Some fields are required. Some fields I can completely skip, depending upon what's exactly needed. And I can go through here and make this request, review and submit the details, and now I have a service request that's submitted, having prompted the user for all that relevant information, knowing exactly who they are, when they're starting, what department they're part of, who they report to, things like that, so that I can automate approval processes, as well as let the user know exactly what kind of cost is incurred based on that specific request. And again, you've got a large library of these out-of-the-box service offerings that you can leverage from day one without having to spend a lot of time creating, a library, from ground zero. Now, users can also use this portal, of course, to check and get updates related to status and progress, whether it be approval processes or fulfillment steps. They can use this to easily get their own information and updates related to issues they've submitted. So you'll notice in the My Open Items section, users can see all of those requests they've submitted, There's a nice graphical indicator that indicates the progress of any particular request, so they can see, where it is within the process. And if they want to pull up details, of course, they can, select that open item and look at information related to the submission, related to the cost, related to notes and information. So if they need to add, additional detail, they can go in and add that additional, information, make that available to IT, so they can have a way to communicate, with IT as they're going through and actually fulfilling the request, as well as being able to get, notes and status and updates from IT through this interface. So it allows them to actively communicate and on an ongoing basis through that item right there from the self-service portal. Now, there's also the idea of a social collaboration aspect to self-service. So you see the chat window over on the right-hand side. There's also a social board up at the top. So if users simply want to, log into self-service and want to ask a question, is anybody else having this issue? Is there any documentation about this particular problem? Provides a way for them to be able to communicate directly, either with other users or groups, as well, customer groups, as well as with IT, to potentially get their answer or resolve their issue, as opposed to, browsing that knowledge base or submitting a request or submitting an incident through the portal. Now, as always, everywhere they go in here, you'll notice up in the top right-hand corner, if they have an issue that just simply, they've asked the question via the social board, they've looked at the catalog, they've looked at the knowledge articles, and they're simply not finding what they're looking for, they always have the ability to simply report an incident, from scratch, a typical one-off. One nice thing I like is, as they go through and they complete this form, for example, you'll notice as they select a template or they provide a summary or description of the issue, Heat will automatically go through and perform a search for that user. So if there are related articles, FAQs, how-to solutions that pertain to that particular topic or pertain to that question or description that they've entered, then it'll automatically search them in the hopes that it can help divert this ticket and allow the user to, browse or find one of those articles that will allow them to resolve their own issue rather than having to, move forward and submit that ticket without requiring the user to manually perform that search. Now, this is all from the perspective of Angela as a self-service user. Now, of course, you have different users logging into Heat under different capacities, different roles. And so Heat supports the idea or concept of, role-based access. So if I were to, say, log out as Angela, for example, and I want to log back into Heat as a different user, in this case, Alan. Now, Alan has additional roles assigned to him. So as Alan logs in, he's actually presented with a drop-down list or a selection list to say, you've got multiple roles assigned to you. Which role would you like to log in under? In this case, I could do everything from, logging in as that self-service user, similar to Angela, or I could log in as an administrator or change manager or problem manager or service desk manager, for example. And that would allow me to have access to different modules, different areas of the tool, as well as be able to view different data than Angela. So rather than just having access to that self-service interface and be able to deal with my own tickets, my own requests, and service catalog, now I've got ability to see things from a team perspective, for example, to see, which users within the service desk team have, incidents assigned, who's got the biggest workload, for example. And so I've got a different dashboard that's laid out for me here that will enable me to see all of that data from a manager perspective. Another nice thing about Heat is it allows you, as you're logged in, to flip back and forth or change those roles as necessary. So even though I'm currently logged in, you see up here in the upper right as a service desk manager, if I need to move from a service desk manager role to the analyst role, then I can actually log in with that same identity and then get a view of my tasks, my incidents, my changes, my problems on my dashboard, looking at it from an individual contributor perspective, versus looking at it from a manager's perspective and be able to move back and forth between those roles seamlessly without having to log in and log out again to be able to see those. So every role that this user is assigned to, they have the ability to then access that interface and access that UI for that role specifically. You'll also see up at the top that based on my role, it also presents me with different dashboards that I can access. So I start off with my standard home page that's assigned to me, but if I need to see other information, other details that I have access to, whether it be service request information, or I want to look at survey information related to incidents, or I want to look at survey information related to service requests, then I can access that information easily through different dashboards that are available to me as a part of that service desk manager role. So as users log into the tool, depending upon who they are and what roles they have access to, you can have a defined or dedicated user interface for that user that presents to them either their incidents and requests and changes that are assigned to them, or that managerial or executive type view that kind of summarizes that data accordingly based on exactly who they are and what role they're logged in under. Now let's say that I'm logging in as an individual contributor, for example, as an analyst, and I want to be able to see, my incidents and my tasks, for example. You can see I can have those windows built for me here on my home page. I also have the ability to, look at, different queries that I have created or different dashboards through the drop-down box. And if I want to actually drill down into any specific issue, and I can open up any issue here in a dedicated form and review the details of, Angela submitted a problem. I can look at the journal entries so I can see those notes the users created, or in this case, outbound notifications related to the resolution and the response targets that you'll see graphically indicated at the top. So there's a nice way for users to be able to look at the detailed information for those incidents and requests, as well as track the progress and status of those requests. Now, all the modules within Heat are all related. So in terms of being able to relate incidents to problems to changes, that can be done. In terms of relating assets out of the CMDB to incidents, that's also possible. So you can actually browse and select a computer system that Angela is having the problem with that will allow me to link that asset directly to the incident. In that case, if I want to browse or view additional details related to that asset, then I can pull those up as well so that I can look at detailed information for her device in terms of what kind of operating system is it running, what kind of memory configuration, et cetera, does it have. So I can use this information to provide better support, better troubleshooting with the user. Now it also allows you to browse additional detail if I want to look at related information for that computer, for example. I can pull up details from the configuration database related to, where is that user service coming from? Is there an impact or some kind of an incident or change already opened for that asset? So I can see, if there's already impacting events that may be causing this problem or affecting this issue. You can also do that from a CMDB perspective. So if you're one of those users, in this case as an analyst, I don't necessarily have the CMDB view, but if I'm that asset manager or I'm that CMDB administrator, then that may be another option that I have available to me. So if I want to see that configuration item information, then again I can flip my role and immediately have access to look at additional detail that may not be accessible to the analyst, but as an asset administrator or somebody that manages the CMDB, I have a lot more access to be able to dig into that information. From here, if I wanted to look at a specific item, then I could take a look at everything from an individual computer for Angela, for example, or to a service, and get some kind of graphical view that would show me exactly how this service is configured. Much more detail available to me to be able to understand exactly where the service is coming from and what assets or items support that service and how individual computers connect and, acquire that service available to me here and in a nice graphical way, as well as, again, providing details related to, which devices actually have open incidents or changes submitted against them, so I get a good understanding of where the problem lies. Is it something further upstream that's going to likely affect an entire department or entire location, or am I dealing with or looking at an individual issue that's something local to the computer system versus something related to the service or the database server or the application server that's likely to affect other users. So you have a detailed CMDB that can not only be managed and browsed from an asset perspective, but then also linked directly to those incidents and to those requests that those users have. So as they're logging those requests, you can record that asset with that ticket and then have access to be able to view the detail related to, related assets, related services, related systems to help provide, again, additional troubleshooting expertise. Now, if we go back to this analyst role, now again, you'll see within this console, you have access to be able to see, my issues, my incidents, as well as those things that may be completely, unassigned. So if I want to log in, I browse those issues that are unassigned. I can either, simple toolbar buttons you can create at the top of your form. Simply say, assign this to me, and it'll immediately fill my name in so that now I own this request. If I want to fill in information related to somebody else's group, somebody else's team, reassign it. And of course, I've got drop downs here to be able to assign it to the network support group or IT or application development, and be able to reassign that ticket if I don't want to take it on my own. There's also the potential to integrate this with desktop management, desktop automation, so that as you're responding to a user request, as in this case, if you want to take remote control, if you need to deploy software, if you need to make some kind of corrective, fix or deploy a patch to that device, then you have access to be able to do that right here from the Heat Service Desk screen, rather than having to worry about logging into some other application and then deploying that application or deploying that patch from there. You have a nice integration so that a large majority of those corrective fixes can be made either through remote control or some kind of scripted action, so that users at the frontline service desk, as analysts in this case, can actually deploy that software or take remote control of that user's device and make that fix without having to escalate or forward a ticket onto someone else. Now, this is from, we kind of talked a little bit about, the end user and service, the self-service portal. Alan's, of course, multiple roles we've looked at, depending upon, analyst, manager, configuration manager. Now, there's also that additional level of being able to log in as an administrator of the tool. Now, your administrator, or in this case, my Heat administrator, when they log in, they're also going to have, a defined home page, a home environment. They see information that's relevant from an administrator perspective. The big difference being is when I look up here in the top right, I also have the ability to configure this application. So logged as an administrator, not only can I go in and create incidents or requests or problems or whatever the case may be, like an analyst or a manager, but I have this additional option to be able to go in and configure the application according to needs. So this is where, logged in as an admin, I have the ability to affect changes to those actual user roles that we've talked about, whether it be the knowledge manager, the service desk manager, the change manager, be able to create those roles and define those roles and permissions within the system so that everybody logging in has the appropriate access. Now, this administrator can also do things regarding making changes or affecting changes to workflow. So, for example, when I have a new hire request, or I have one of those access requests to a new application, this is where I can actually go in and graphically build out the workflow, the steps, the fulfillment, tasks and steps that are required to actually onboard that employee or terminate that employee or whatever the case may be. So as I go in and look at that new employee setup, this provides me with the ability to define, exactly what information is necessary, what is the form going to look like. So you'll see here I can go through and actively, build those questions and lay those questions out so I can see exactly what the user is going to have to go through and fill out, like we saw before, when they go through and make that new hire request. And it provides a nice, preview function, so you can actually see right here as you're building it exactly what that end user is going to see as they go through and create that request, rather than having to, back in and out or log in as a different profile in order to see that. I can do that as I build it. You can even use this little icon here to localize this data. So if I need to translate any of this content into Spanish or into Japanese or French, I can easily do that here through the form as I build it, or the end user can actually have that capacity to do that as they're logging the request. So they can actually translate these fields of information and prompts on the form as they're going through and filling it out. So if they are accessing this and they need the Spanish version or the French version, they can easily get that right there from the interface. This fulfillment stuff, the fulfillment page, is what I really wanted to show, and this is the nice graphical workflow builder that a lot of customers are looking for, so that you have a nice easy way and kind of a visual, Visio style format to lay out the fulfillment process. What are the steps that are involved when somebody creates a new employee? We've defined the new employee form and asked all the relevant questions. Now, taking that data, what do we need to do with it? Do we need to create tasks? Do we need to generate changes within the environment? What needs to happen? And you have a nice graphical workflow builder here and a library over on the left-hand side to allow you to define that process all the way from creating records to if I need to get approvals for this process and I need that approval process to fall into this at some point, then I can come in and create those new approvals, drop those in here and define all the details in terms of what constitutes approval. Who needs to approve? Does it require just first person to approve? Does it require majority vote, percentage, things like that? So you can define, what constitutes approval, what constitutes rejection, and be able to lay out a process for a new hire or termination, things like that, very simply using a graphical drag and drop layout, so that you can define very easily what your new hire process looks like or what your user access process needs to be. And then, of course, being able to publish it. Who has access to it? Is it currently being worked on? Is it published and ready to go? If I need to add additional access, who else has access to it? And what level of access do they have? So that as we talk about, things like the self-service portal, for example, not everybody logging into the self-service portal is going to see that same service catalog. They're not going to see the same list of knowledge articles. Depending upon who they are and what role they're a part of, they may have access. If they're a part of the HR staff role, then they may have access to the new hire request. If they're a part of some other role within the environment, maybe they have a completely different set of requests, completely different set of access to knowledge articles. That's something that can all be easily defined by the administrator by walking through, this series of, tabs from front to end to define exactly what kind of, request is being created, what kind of questions need to be asked, how is it going to be fulfilled, who has access to it, and then being able to, save or, make that, publish that request to make it available to those users so that as they log into that self-service portal, they have access to everything they need, but no undue access to requests or options that they shouldn't have. Now, the last key piece, and one of the big things with Heat that I really, really like, is the fact that out of the box, from a reporting standpoint, you've got some very, very valuable dashboards and reports that are accessible out of the box without having to spend a lot of time creating them. or creating the calculations around them more to the point, to allow you to get very valuable information out of the service desk, not just how many tickets are open and who they're assigned to, but trending analysis, so you can see how you're trending up and down from month to month, from week to week, which is sometimes very time consuming in terms of getting to that information, but also being able to look at things like cost, being able to look at which services are driving the most cost in the environment, which ones are requiring the most time, for example. And then even back here on my home page as an admin, I can look at, for example, let's look at this executive scorecard. And again, very valuable statistics that are often very hard to derive, to get at. Things like, cost per incident. What's my average cost for every incident we deal with? What's my average cost per request? How much time are we spending? These metrics that you see here on the scorecard, they look very simple coming from Heat here, and then it's an out-of-the-box report that's on the dashboard. But for many, many products, deriving that cost and deriving, mean time to repair and mean time to fix and getting trend analysis and things like that is very, very difficult. Even though it may be possible, it requires some effort in terms of consulting and implementation to be able to get to this kind of information, whereas you have that right out of the box for an administrator to be able to dig into incidents and service requests and service level management, and be able to get valuable information in terms of not only what the actual stats are, but then being able to compare those against targets that you've defined, so that you can see, are we meeting the targets in terms of service level performance, for example. So very very, very good metrics that are available right out of the box, that don't require you as a customer to have to sit down and create lots of calculated fields, lots of detailed reports, and be able to get at good quality analytics and metrics around service performance and service fulfillment, without having to spend a lot of time building those from the ground up. Now, I know it looks like we've got close to about 3 minutes left. I wanted to have a few minutes for any questions that may have been asked via the chat window, or any questions that users on the phone have. So please feel free, if you have any of those questions, please speak up, type it in the chat window, and we'll try and address those as they come out.
And we do have questions. First one, Kyle, actually we have two from JJ. First question from JJ is, from the items needed, example computer, can that pull from a web-based procurement system?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can take Heat, and by the way, I don't know that I mentioned it, this software is available, it's all web-based. However, it can be deployed on premises. It can be deployed as a cloud offering. So depending upon whether you want to manage the infrastructure or have it running in the cloud, you can do either way. And in either format, you of course have integration options to be able to integrate and pull data from external tools, whether it be an asset management database or spreadsheet you have already existing, or financials from Oracle, from PO and invoice information. The information can be pulled into Heat from any number of external locations. It's a matter of defining that interface or integration to allow you to access that information and pull it into a table or object within Heat, so you have access to it through the UI.
And another question from JJ, and you may or may not have the answer to this because I think it addresses the future of this product, but when it comes to the journal entries, will there ever be the ability to format the text, example, bold, italics, underlined, etc.?
In the journal, again, yeah, you're probably right about that. I don't know about their intent for that. As of today, you can't format the journal text. Now, of course, within things like knowledge articles and emails that get generated to the users for et cetera, the content of emails, you can, format and, design this content as you see here, whether it's emboldened or highlighted, add graphics and company logos and, skin these emails and even skin the interface. I can't speak specifically to the journal entries, But that's a nice suggestion. We'll have to look at that to see what's on target. It's not there today, but that's certainly something that could be easily done.
Okay, and our next question comes from Chuck. Chuck would like to know, how are the CI and relationships discovered? And part B of his question, is this done by heat or relay on other applications or systems?
Yep, good question. So, and the answer is any or all, or both. Heat does have a discovery component to it. It's agent-based, so you'll see even here in my report listing, I can look at, agent deployment throughout my environment and be able to see, how many agents are deployed or installed on different devices. And through that agent and there's also agent list discovery, that can be used to populate the CMDB inside of Heat. So you can manually enter those CIs and manually create those assets directly through the Heat interface and through a form. You can also automatically discover those, whether it be through agent list discovery or agent-based discovery, and populate that. Doesn't have to necessarily be the Heat agent. We can, again, integrate and pull that data in from SCCM. Of course, you're probably going to see that in the near term coming from things like Landesk and other tools. So you have the ability to leverage existing data sources for those assets if you have them. If not, then there is a discovery and agent-based and agent-less discovery capability that can be integrated directly through the Heat software to enable that.
And I just wanted to reiterate that the actual official title of this product right now is Ivanti Service Manager. I just want to make sure that that's understood. That's what this product's referred to. If there are any other questions, I encourage you to please send those questions to Flycast Partners at info@flycastpartners.com, or simply pick up the phone and dial 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. We want to thank Kyle for taking time out of his busy day to present for us today, and thank each and every one of you for attending another Flycast Partners webinar. I know that everybody leads busy lives, and request that you go ahead and check out some of our future webinars. Sign up for those you're interested in. Send them off to folks you think might be interested in them. And with that being said, enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. Thank you.